Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new Applied Analytics seminar. I'm sorry, Emily, you are stuck with me today because Dave sends apologies. Shall we wait just one more minute for people to join?
So while people are joining, I'll just say I'm going to apologise profusely for my coughing and spluttering and as I go through. It's quite ironic that I'm actually suffering from some post-COVID symptoms, considering I'm talking about a COVID project. So yeah, I'm still not able to breathe properly and absolutely knackered. So, but hopefully, yeah, not quite on fine form, but hopefully can still get across the project. Just pretend I've been smoking about 40 cigarettes a day for the last 20 years.
Guess we can start, Emily. What do you think?
Sure.
Let me introduce you, just a few words. I was reading your biography, very interesting and fascinating, your background, Emily. So for those who don't know, Professor Emily Jefferson, she's an academic lead and director of Health Informatics Center at Dundee. She's professor of health data science and is involved with a range of projects in the fields of data science, clinical imaging, data linkage, and machine learning. And today she will talk us through the CoConnect platform. So over to you, Emily, and thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction there. So can I just check that people can see my screen?
I can, we can, yes.
Cool, grand. Okay, great. I'll just convince you all that I definitely do have COVID. Okay, cool. So yeah, CoConnect. So CoConnect stands for the COVID, Curated and Open Analysis and Research Platform, otherwise known as CoConnect if you're really down with the kids. So I'm presenting this on behalf of the CoConnect Consortium. I suppose who am I and what on earth do I know about this field? So I'm the director of the Health Informatics Centre up in sunny Dundee. And we have a fun team of experts who provide research services and also carry out academic research. And I always say that we've got a fun team because I'm often on the lookout for recruits, so I might as well use this opportunity to shamelessly pitch the fact that we're looking for some people and all of the great stuff that we do. So please do come and work for us if you're looking for your next exciting post. So over the last few years, we've supported over £380 million of grants and we've over 700 different research projects. We've provided over 3,000 different linked anonymised data extracts for research. We run a regional safe haven, but also run lots of different national and international projects. We developed bespoke software for research projects and disease registries. Moved on a bit too quickly. We've got a team currently of about 50-60 people in data science, informatics, data governance, machine learning, AI, data linkage, and data security. So if you're interested in any of those areas and looking to do something new and exciting, please do contact us. So my main research area is in how to build infrastructures and software which meet the needs of the research community while still meeting the data governance requirements and maintaining patient trust and confidentiality. And generally, I would say that the requirements of data governance have trumped those of providing health data at pace. Whereas with appropriate automation and controls, this needn't be the case. So I'm going to talk to you today about what we've been doing with COVID in this area. And I generally say that my research area is in how to move from observational data analysis on text-based data into a new world of predictive analysis supporting AI and machine learning on big data such as imaging and genetic information too. So onto COVID data and the CoConnect platform. So the vision is to transform the UK's COVID-19 response by providing COVID-19 related data sets and make them findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Many people know this as FAIR, and provide expert data engineering enabled by HDR UK to support and catalyse their responsible use in research and innovation. That's a long sentence. The project started off in November 2020. It's a £4 million project over 18 months, although we've just been granted a 6-month no-cost extension. It's actually got people from 29 different organisations, so it's very much a collaborative effort across the whole of the UK. As you can imagine, just getting a simple agreement in place between 29 organisations right at the offset, it's been quite a coordination activity. And we're currently onboarding over 58 different federated sources from across the UK, and it's co-led by myself, Phil Quinlan, Aziz Sheikh, and Susan Hopkins. If you don't know Susan, she's the deputy director of PHE, or she was at the time, and you might have spotted her presenting on the daily stand-ups next to ministers. So she was a really helpful person to get on board on the project. So this is a little clip I'm going to play to remind you of where we were kind of a year and a half ago, basically in July 2020. And this is Sir Patrick Vallance, as you will know, and he's talking about the lessons to be learned from the pandemic to a government select committee. It was really well known at that time how difficult it was to get at the data that we needed to rapidly support the COVID response. So I'll just play you this because it's quite pertinent.
One lesson which I think is a very important one to learn from this pandemic for emergencies in general is that data flows and data systems are incredibly important. You need the information in order to be able to make the decisions, and therefore for any emergency situation, those data systems need to be in place up front.
Excuse me. And I still think that this is very pertinent today and is still a challenge, even considering all of the huge work that's been undertaken by this project and many others to try and resolve this situation. So there's a balancing act with data, as I'm sure many of you on this call will be aware of. So providing access to data must balance these two factors: the need to protect patient confidentiality on one side, and the need for timely access to good quality data for research. So there's a general fear that our health data may be misused. It's regularly talked about in the sort of tabloid press, and in this example I've provided here, there's a website called the Big Brother Watch, which says that a wave of emergency powers and extreme measures in response to the coronavirus pandemic have brought about the greatest loss of liberty in our country's history. And they went on to talk about the challenges with data and the fact that data was being used all of the time. So the flip side of this is that data is needed to answer questions that everybody needed to know about how to respond to the pandemic, and needed to do that very rapidly. And this is a BBC News article that says that antibodies fall rapidly after a COVID infection, but state that exactly what the antibody drop means for immunity is still uncertain. And of course, you need data in order to answer that question, and rapid access to data. So I'm very sorry. So this very basic schematic just tries to get across the idea that there are many different data silos out there, so the challenge is that we want to get timely access to patient data for research, but the challenge of doing that across many different disease areas has been known about for years. It's just that COVID has kind of highlighted this problem. So quite rightly, data has to be handled in a securely and with patient confidentiality protected. But in many instances, it can take months, if not years, to obtain data sharing agreements and data governance agreements, and for data to be linked and provided for research. So COVID has highlighted this, but it's been known about for many, many different research areas, or many access to all data sets really. And data sets are in different formats. They're known about via word of mouth, and this idea of cohort discovery takes time and multiple iterations. So I'll just go into that that last point there around the cohort discovery a little bit more detail. So most of the time, if a researcher wants to access data, first of all, what they have to do is approach each different organization who have data and ask them if they have the relevant data to answer the specific research question. And the organization then has to get somebody to write a bespoke query on their data to find out whether there's people that meet the particular research criteria. And a researcher then may alter their criteria, go back and forth with the organisation to rerun the query until they actually find the right information. So, for instance, a researcher might say, well, out of the people in your data set, how many people are between the ages of 20 and 40 who've also had a prescription for such and such, or also have a read code in their medical record for a particular disease or something. It might be that by the time the data custodian goes and runs that query, it might come back with out of 2,000 people, there's actually only 3 people that meet that criteria. And so in which case the researcher relaxes their search criteria and says, okay, well, I want to go between 20 and 60-year-olds now. Right, okay, now that's gone up to a few hundred people. Right, that's enough for my study. So this iteration of finding the right people to do the study on goes back and forth and back and forth. And when you're looking at getting data from multiple different sources, you have to do that with each different data custodian, and need to run the analysis in multiple different places. So this takes time, and I've spoken to many different research groups and industry groups who say that it can take many months just to find out that a data set doesn't have the people that they need in there, or the data that they need in there. So then once you know that a place does have data, or a particular group has that data, you've then got to put in a data approval form, get access to that data, and the data custodian may well have to do a bespoke query to extract the relevant data for your particular research study. You then maybe have to do some linkage with other data sets. And then the researcher might have to standardize heterogeneous data sources into the same format before they can then carry out their analysis. So all of these different steps along the way take significant time, and it might mean that there's kind of a year's delay before you can actually really start to answer your research questions. So CoConnect is trying to get over or reduce the amount of time that it takes to carry out all of these different steps. So the objective is to provide 4 new capabilities, or it was to begin with, and we added an additional one at the once the project had started. So what we're trying to do is provide a single platform for discoverability and feasibility analysis to understand if the required data or populations do exist to answer a specific question, and integrate this into the HDR UK Gateway as the cohort discovery tool. We're also trying to build the ability for researchers and public health groups to perform meta-analysis and synthesis over multiple different UK cohorts. So, for example, Public Health Scotland could have a look at an aggregate level at Public Health England's data and compare the results for a sort of aggregate trend analysis. The ability to link COVID-19 cohorts to multi-dimensional data, so it's about it's streamlining the linkage process there, and to support that at pace across the 4 nations, and further development of robust UK health data infrastructure to enable longer-term impact for health data science. So an infrastructure that isn't just built just for COVID-19 and a short-term fix, but also something that can then be used for longer-term access and to improve across multiple different disease areas. So we're also looking at additional objectives, and we added these after the project was to onboard the HDR UK national course studies data as well into the platform, and to support questions around vaccines. In trying to build all of this and do all of this, we were working across lots and lots of different data partners to onboard their federated data into the platform. And in order to kind of explain what we were trying to do and explain the architecture and what we needed their help with, we actually developed a video explainer, because we thought that would really help them kind of get their heads around it. So I'm going to play that now. It gives you a break from listening to me for a bit, and also I hope gets across the idea of what we're trying to do.
This video aims to support the data governance teams to describe the intentions of CoConnect and to support the approvals process. CoConnect is a new UK-wide infrastructure supporting researchers to find and access COVID data at pace. Across the UK, data which can help us answer key questions about COVID-19 has been collected. Each time a patient has taken part in research, visited their GP or hospital, or taken a test, data is securely held by the organisation who collected it. Using larger volumes of data from different sources helps us understand the nation's health and COVID-19 status. It's difficult and complex for public health groups, researchers, policymakers and government to find and access lots of high-quality data quickly and efficiently to make decisions. If researchers want to access these data sets, there are lots of technical and governance processes to go through. These make sure people's privacy is protected and data is handled securely within the law. But these processes can take a long time to approve and put in place. Enter the COVID, Curated and Open Analysis and Research platform, otherwise known as CoConnect. CoConnect uses cutting-edge technology to support research quickly, whilst making sure people's information is kept private and secure. CoConnect has patient involvement at the heart of its design. Our team of public members are directly involved in the project to make sure that the public's perspective is heard and acted upon at every stage. CoConnect allows researchers to search and compare data across the UK through one website, the Health Data rEsearCh Innovation Gateway. Importantly, the data doesn't move from the partners who own it, and they have the final say on who can access it. Within each CoConnect data partner, a secure computer is set up, which is separate from the location where identifiable data is stored. A copy of relevant data in a common format is transferred onto the computer without any identifiable information. This is known as pseudonymous data. For example, information like names, addresses, dates of birth, and specific dates of testing or care are removed. Before the data is transferred, the unique number for each person is converted into a new pseudonymous code by each partner. In our example, all that is transferred about Jane Doe is the pseudonymous code and that this person had a positive PCR test on the second week of August 2020. Software within the secure environment will send a message out to the gateway, which will return any questions which need to be run on the data. The software will return a summary answer to each question as the number of the people which meet the criteria, helping researchers discover the most useful data. In this example, there were 102 people in the dataset who have had a PCR test which was positive and were under the age of 40. To make sure people cannot be identified, each partner can set a threshold in which no results are returned. For most, this means only results with more than 10 people are returned. The same question is automatically run across all data partners providing the information from across the UK. The Gateway website and CoConnect only ever see anonymous data and so will never find out who a person is. Not all questions can be answered by summary data. A future aim of CoConnect is to support partners to automate the extraction of a pseudonymous subset of data relevant to a specific research project from each partner. This would require research project-specific permissions to be obtained and for the research to be within the public interest. The Gateway could support such applications in a standardized way across partners. The current plan is for extracted data to be placed into what is called a trusted research environment. Trusted research environments are secure IT systems that researchers can remotely connect to and ask research questions on pseudonymized data. The data cannot be copied or removed from the trusted research environment. Researchers can only export answers such as a trend or a graph. The CoConnect architecture means that data transferred into the trusted research environment will have been cleaned and transformed into a common format prior to extraction. This common format reduces the amount of effort on each single research project supporting rapid research to help the government and policymakers to take decisions. CoConnect will work with all partners to understand how we can ensure an individual's data is given the same pseudonymous code across all partners. This will support linkage across the data about that individual. When data is extracted for a research project, the plan is that the pseudonymous code is converted into a unique identifier for that specific project. Researchers will be completely unaware of who the information is about. Linking data in this anonymous, safe way enables rapid, powerful research. For example, COVID-19 results from a test centre can be linked to hospital records along with prescriptions from pharmacies. By linking these three datasets, researchers can understand whether people with different existing health conditions are more or less susceptible to COVID-19 impacting healthcare treatments. The CoConnect architecture supports all of this without individuals being identifiable. The plan will continue to be refined in collaboration with all the partners of CoConnect. If you want to know more about CoConnect, visit our website.
Cool. So hopefully that gave you a bit of an overview of kind of the kind of high level architecture and how we sort of protect patient confidentiality, but still enable it to be secure. So essentially what's set up is that there's in each different federated node, there's an area within the node where they manage their normal data set, and what they do is they create a pseudonymized extract of that data and they put that into a secure virtual machine, and that's standardized into the OMOP data standard. And then basically you have the HDR UK Gateway and a query engine, and it sends queries that are submitted by researchers to discover data to the virtual machine, which then returns a high-level aggregate answer back to the HDR UK Gateway in order to say how many people meet the particular research criteria. Or for data partners that have agreed to turn on the capability, you could do meta-analysis, which is basically sort of trends and things looking at that data as well. So you can submit these requests, and what is returned is high-level aggregate information. The next sort of level from that is the idea that within these virtual machines, there's a standardized subset of data, and for data partners that have agreed to do so, there's a standardized pseudonymized ID for each patient. And what that means is that when you then, after new governance approvals on a per project basis, if you want to then extract that data into a trusted research environment, you can do so, and that provides linkage across these different nodes if the same pseudonymized ID is used. But on extract, the pseudonymized ID is turned into a project ID, and so that global pseudonymized ID is never exported anywhere else. So that's the kind of the very high level architecture of what's set up in each different federated node. So I'm now going to go into kind of another sort of deeper layer for this technical audience that we've got here today. Again, this idea is that you have this federated node, but there are a few kind of cool things here. So what we're doing is we're asking, if we're going to go from the left of the diagram across to the right, and what we're doing is we have identifiable data sets in their live system. So this can either be in large trusted research environments like Public Health Scotland or NHS Digital, etc., or it could be a consented research cohort that's run hosted within a particular university, for instance. But basically, they have the raw data that they've collected here on the left-hand side. We ask them to extract data that they're wanting to put into the CoConnect platform, and create a pseudonymized extract of this. And then from that pseudonymized extract, they then run the White Rabbit software. And White Rabbit produces a metadata file, which is fully anonymous, provides synthetic data and information about the fields and the data that's captured within this pseudonymized database. And the White Rabbit produces what's called a scan report, which is a metadata file. That's then sent to the CoConnect core data mapping team. And what we do with that scan file is then produce a Python script which will convert the data using the information in the scan report into the OMOP standard. So basically, without seeing any of the raw data underneath, without ever having the CoConnect kind of core team ever having to look at any of the data underneath, we're able to produce a mapping script that can be run by each different data partner, and we provide that back to them so that we can take their pseudonymized data and then do OMOP mapping. So if those of you who aren't aware, OMOP is a data standard, and it can be slightly left up for interpretation as to how data can be mapped onto the OMOP standard. And so basically, by doing the OMOP mapping in a standardized way across all of our different data partners, it means that we're doing that mapping in the same using the same sort of methods, and it means that there's then standardization across all of the different data sources onboarded. So basically, the Python script for each specific data partner is passed back to the data partner. They run that on their database, and then that pseudonymized OMOP database is loaded into BC plaTform software. So BC Platforms is excuse me. BC Platforms link software runs within the data partner infrastructure, and it's a fully secure, fully tested commercial platform with open APIs that basically mean that when you query the data, all they return back is an aggregate count of the information that's in there, or a trend line, again at an aggregate level. So within the HDR UK Gateway, now on the far right of the structure here, there's another piece of BC Platforms software called rQuest, and this provides the capability for researchers to submit research questions, and they're then sent to each individual node, which runs the query and returns the aggregate level count. So privacy is done by design, so it's a fully secure environment. So identifiable data is only ever handled by the data partners within their existing secure infrastructure. The data is pseudonymized before being present to the cohort discovery tool to query. The pseudonymized database is stored in a secure VM under the control of the data partners. Only aggregate results or metadata ever leave the control of the data partner without further approvals. Aggregate results are set up to only return a count if there are 10 or more results, and this can be configured to a lower or an upper limit depending what the data partners are comfortable with. Researchers gaining access to aggregate data via the HDR Innovation Gateway go through an approval process, ensuring that they're associated with an appropriate organization. Firewalls are still in place within the data partner organization and require no inbound rules, along with standard controls against malicious attacks, etc. And researchers seeking to access the underlying low-level data will need their own additional governance approvals to undertake the research, and data will be stored in an accredited trusted research environment if you need to get to that low level of analysis. And pseudo identifiers are always replaced with project-specific identifiers when the data is extracted into a trusted research environment. So this means that linkage is possible, but the research teams never see that sort of global pseudo ID. So if you're interested in accessing the cohort discovery tool, if you go to the gateway and drop down the explore function, there's a cohort discovery capability there. In order to make sure that you're a kind of trusted researcher, you need to go on and sign up basically before you can actually run the tool. And this is what it looks like. So there's a demo on the on YouTube, and you can get a link to that. This is kind of what the tool looks like. So I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time just playing this, because this is available for you to go and have a look. But basically, you can select that you're interested in people with asthma. Then you can select other variables that you want to find out about these: ICD-10 codes, etc., SNOMED codes, age, male, female, etc. And then you can run a query and you can find out how many people there are in each different data set and slice and dice those by various different parameters. You can filter it based on a load of parameters as well. And this is just a kind of simple case of the stuff that you can do. And then you can actually go in and have a look at a bit more detail about where these different data sets come from. So it's just some additional functionality there in terms of filtering by different criteria. Just let it play to the next step. So that's showing that there aren't very many, and then just wait to show you the last little bit of where these different data sets come from. So if you now look at the results, you can see all of the different people, and you can see various different data sets and the number of people across those different data sets. So this is now querying across 4 different data sets. This is just an example where you can then go and click on each one, and you can request access once you know that there is data that meets your research criteria. Okay, so these are the different data sources that we've been onboarding as part of CoConnect. So these were the original ones that we've onboarded. These have sort of changed a little bit over time. We're now onboarding quite a few more. We've currently got 9 data sets live on the platform, with many more that are installed, and we're just waiting on the final governance approval process. So an important thing to note from this table is that we're including both research collected cohorts that focus on COVID data, and also unconsented data sets from across the whole UK population. So the unconsented data include data from NHS Digital, Public Health England, Public Health Scotland, equivalents in Wales, and also Northern Ireland. And we're also trying to augment some cohorts that originally were collected without COVID data, but augment those cohorts with this linked data in the overall system. So there's several different advantages for data partners to include their data and work with us to onboard their data into the system. So it's basically a kind of an advertising promotional resource. So it means that national and international groups can search via the gateway and contact the data partner to collaborate on new research. Each data partner can run queries across their data and contrast that with the data from other data sources to add to the power of their analysis. Data is standardized across the data sources with the OMOP standards, so data from one source can be comparable to another one, supporting this idea of analysis at scale. For data sources who've agreed to do it, you can use the same pseudo ID, which means that there can be no double counting, and also that you can do this data linkage if you're putting the data into a trusted research environment. So it supports research cohorts to link to routinely collected data, longitudinal routinely collected data, and it adds capacity to each different data partner for their own efforts to capture and standardize the data. And another thing that we're doing as well, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit, is around supporting different data on serology information, COVID serology data information as well, and provide a standardized way of doing that. So there were kind of 4 main phases really to the project, or main things that we're wanting to deliver, and that's a process to approve this new architecture, and that's through kind of the data governance processes and DPIAs across all of the data partners. Key thing that we're wanting to make sure we delivered was this idea of discovery via the cohort discovery tool. And then the other things that we were wanting to deliver kind of later on in the project was this idea of using the same architecture of meta-analysis, and then also semi-automated linkage into a standardized way into a trusted research environment. So we planned on running an exemplar research project, which could compare the analysis possible via meta-analysis capabilities, so that aggregate level meta-analysis via the tool, and also compare that to what you could do at row level analysis within a single TRE. So we've got ethical approvals and plans to do this project, but unfortunately we've had some governance approval delays, so with the no cost extension, we're kind of looking at afresh at the questions and things that we can ask. So we're not quite as far on with this exemplar as we would have liked. So the other thing I sort of started mentioning before is this idea of capturing granular level serology data. So that's antibody data. And one of the things we found and we put in our original grant proposal is that there's a major problem that labs across the UK were only actually collecting positive or negative test results rather than the number of antibodies per volume and sample to ratio cutoff ratio, assay type, and neutralization titer. So if you don't have that information, it was very, very difficult to actually see how the immunity lasted and compare different people's kind of response and things to COVID, because it didn't have the granular level information. And so basically we needed to try and capture that granular level information, and so there's a work package within CoConnect to actually work with different LIMS systems and health boards to develop a standard to capture COVID serology data, and actually then make that available at scale for people to do the research. Obviously, during the time from when the grant was awarded to then to now, vaccines came in, and so it's now still very relevant in terms of how natural immunity compares to vaccines and things, and we've developed this standard, and that work is very much in process. So that's kind of how the architecture works, but along the way we've encountered many different challenges, and the main one was that the underpinning architecture to do this is novel, and certainly novel at this scale, and so we found that each different data custodian recognised the benefits of the platform, but many were unclear about the process to formally approve this new model. And we've worked across different data custodians to co-develop the new processes and document the security controls and things. So we found vast differences in technical knowledge and infrastructures across the different data custodians, especially when you compare kind of small research groups who've collected consented research data with larger organisations such as NHS Digital, Public Health Scotland, SAIL, etc. And so we've kind of evolved two different governance models, and that's one for the consented research cohorts, which required a kind of a two-stage DPIA process, and then for unconsented population level data, we found that we required kind of four different documents, and they were DPIAs, data access applications, security risks assessments, disclosure control assessments, and we've kind of developed this model across those different groups. So the next set of slides relate to kind of working with the population level unconsented data. So this is the kind of current architecture, or the architecture that was set up before CoConnect. So the idea is that you've got a large trusted research environment. This could be in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, England, where you've got a data repository there on the left, and a minimum amount of data is extracted to answer a specific scientific question into a trusted research environment, otherwise known as a safe haven, for a researcher to analyze that data and then export only the aggregate level analysis into that. So that's the status quo, and that's the normal kind of data governance applications that these groups get, and the normal type of projects that they support. So what we were asking them to do is essentially a whole new bit of architecture. So we didn't want this secure virtual machine to be part of the trusted research environment, but we still wanted it to run within that the overall architecture. And rather than wanting the minimum amount of data to answer the scientific question, we wanted as much data as available, because this is all about cohort discovery. And so you want to make available all of the data to analyze it. And we're also wanting them to standardize it into OMOP and make it all pseudonymized. And the additional thing here is obviously still aggregate level information that's being exported, but basically it's allowing a new tool to query this in order to provide that information. So we found that each of these different TREs were supportive, and once they understood what we were trying to do, they thought, oh, that's really cool. It make researchers be able to find the data, and it will mean that we get less queries about what data we have and feasibility analysis. However, what they didn't know was how to approve that this new architecture could exist. And so even though this data wouldn't apply by GDPR or anything, because it's fully anonymous and it's fully aggregate level, they still wanted it to go through all of the kind of normal governance approval processes and other committees. And so we generally found that each one needed 4 different documents, each of which was over 100 pages long and went to 4 different committees to approve. And this has taken a long time to kind of get in there, but now that is there, and now that process is either in the process of being agreed or has already been agreed, we're much further down the line. So the other difference is as well that the idea that the exports of subsets of data could possibly be transferred into a different trusted research environment. So these standardized linked data sets could theoretically go somewhere else as well. And so explaining this also kind of took some more understanding too. So what we've done in less than a year is basically work with each one of these groups, discover this new approval process, which was quite significant, and required a huge amount of kind of documentation and checks along the way. But we've installed software ready for this work to take place, and either once the governance is finally approved, or in many cases has already been approved, we can now turn to switch these things on. So just to put this into kind of context of other kind of federated tools and cohort discovery things, obviously there are many different systems out there which do cohort discovery and or meta-analysis. So some of them I've just listed here that people may well be aware of, but there are many different federated solutions. So several of the ones we've listed here come with kind of commercial agreements and proprietary standards though. And so and they can often be kind of focused on recruitment for clinical trials rather than observational data analysis. And several different academic solutions require inbound firewall changes and are not kind of on the level of population data sets. So they're mainly looking at consented data sets. So the main difference with the cohort discovery tool and the work we've been doing with CoConnect is that we're trying to find observational data as well as recruit people for clinical analysis. Our aim is to be able to do this at UK population-wide data from one single query engine, and we're also wanting to use open standards and open APIs and have many people kind of work into this new kind of architecture and new way of doing things. So what's next? So HDR UK Alleviate advanced pain discovery platform. So as stated earlier, an objective of CoConnect is to further develop the robust UK health data infrastructure to enable long-term impact for health data science beyond COVID-19. So this architecture is helpful across all disease areas, and what we're trying to do with Alleviate is basically onboard into the same architecture pain data sets from across the UK as part of this new Alleviate hub, which I'm the director of. So the hub was launched last year, and for those of you who aren't too clear about it, The hubs kind of fit right in the middle of the overall kind of HDR UK ecosystem, and provide research services. So the Alleviate Pain one is one of several different hubs which exist, and there's going to be more hubs, and this is focusing on pain. So that's ongoing, and we're using the same platform to do that for Alleviate. So the other thing is the plans for the next stage of HDR UK. I'm not going to go into great detail about this because these things are we've drafted, but are still in the hands of the independent review panel and the funders in terms of what they're agreeing for us to do for QQR2. But I'm just going to give you a few ideas about how we can expand this architecture and what our ideas are for QQR2. So at the moment, the federated analytics capability is reasonably straightforward. It gives us basic trend lines out of the box with BC platforms. But I think that we can build on that. And the great thing of working with BC platforms is that although they're a commercial company, they're very supportive of open standards and open source to kind of help build this capability. So now that the kind of capability is there to send a query and get back aggregate results, there's all sorts of other things that then you can do with federated analytics. So BC Platforms also out the box at the moment enables GWAS queries, VWAS, and these trend lines. And so actually onboarding some more genetic data from different sources as well could mean that we can do federated analytics out the box just using this what BC Platforms already offers. So this is the slide I presented earlier in terms of how all of the different components fit together and things, and the overall architecture. So just to say, what we've done is ensure that there's APIs available at each of these different points. And so the idea with CoConnect was very much that it was put in place for speed and to demonstrate the capability of such an approach. We're not tied into BC platforms, we're not tied into any of the particular components. They can be swapped out and improved, and we're wanting to improve them. We're wanting to use APIs, and we're wanting to use this new way of doing it. And we want this not just to be, a small group developing this infrastructure. We're wanting the science of the infrastructure research community to work with us and do this and build different things into this kind of this capability. So a few different things that we could do, and this is just some ideas. So this is the slide before. I've just put on here where the open source bits are and the licenses and things. This is all available in GitHub, and where the open APIs are. We'd be really happy to work with other groups to develop methods on White Rabbit using metadata and use these within different TREs. So although we've developed these scripts to do the mapping, it doesn't have to just be the mapping for CoConnect and to provide this for different groups. We could provide those mapping scripts to others. So let's say we've provided the data to map some Scottish data into OMOP. We're happy to provide that information to anybody else to convert Scottish data into OMOP and provide those tools. So we want other people to use that resource. We could put in different architectures here. It doesn't have to be OMOP standard. It could be other standards. It could use concepts. It could use knowledge graphs, etc., to develop the data structures in this part of the architecture. We could replace the BC Platforms link software and this is something we're currently working on with an open source version called Link Lite, and we can enhance the federated analytics capability with various different things. So Data Shield provides a load of really great federated R scripts to analyze data and provide aggregate level information. So could we actually embed some of the functionality here into this architecture to kind of enable us to scale and add more capability? We could add in other tools. So there's many other tools out there for federated analytics. So why don't we embed some of these in here? The main thing is that it's only ever returning aggregate level analysis, but we could add the capabilities. add in other interfaces, so a prognostic atlas, do it using other tools to other interfaces to query the data underneath. It doesn't have to be the PC platform's query interface. And interface with other public APIs like Elixir Beacon, EBI biosamples, GA4GH, which I can never say. So all sorts of places where basically we can enhance each one of these different modules. And another thing we could do is enhance it for finding people with clinical trials, put in a prognostic atlas to query the data to provide some high-level information to patients or clinicians also interested in this sort of data. And another thing to look at as a possible advantage of this system is this is current model. But actually, you can do federated analytics across different nodes of this existing model. So where an architecture like CoConnect can help is that if each different data repository produces their data into a standardized format, again, it doesn't have to be OMOP, but it could be a standardized format and a pseudonymized format, and then puts exactly the same cohort and homogenized data into the TRE, it then means you can do analysis in each different TRE independently, pull out the aggregate results, and then do meta-analysis across it. But without having that standardized process to homogenize the data, it's actually very, very difficult to do this. And so in producing that standardized data set, this can very much help this type of federated analytics as well. So just to conclude then, what we've done so far is to change the landscape to agree a process to approve this new architecture to be supported by trusted research environments and research cohorts. And we're well over halfway in terms of the governance sign-off and things for most of those data sets. So as in most of them, it's all been approved, and it's just the technical side now. So we've installed the platform across most data partners, and they're ready to go once they have the final governance sign-off. We've launched the cohort discovery tool. It's live right now within the gateway with 9 data sets, and we're hoping to get a few more across the line very, very shortly. We've developed open source tools for standardized data mapping of data into OMOP without having to see the underpinning data, and that's a key thing here, without having to see the underpinning data. And just to sort of, in abstract, very simple terms, kind of what we've really done is put in a queue and a job scheduler from a single point, so the HDR UK Gateway, and processing nodes across a range of different data sources, federated data sources. And so that architecture can very much be built upon, but was new and needed governance approvals and a new way of sort of thinking about things. And so what we're really wanting to do is expand upon this model and provide new functionality for new federated analysis data sets and methods, and work with the community to do it. So if you're interested in finding out more, please do have a quick look at our website. We've got links to all of our open source stuff, descriptions, an onboarding pack, how you do all of the different steps, etc. And we're more than happy to build new collaborations and enhance this. And that's me. And thank you very much for listening.
Wow, Emily, thank you so much. This seems like a massive work in 1 year. So there are a few questions in the chat. So Paul is asking about, would accreditation of TREs help with this process, Tim and Emily, to fast track approval process?
So I think accreditations of TREs is a really important thing. I think there are some great steps towards that. I think what we're trying to do at an abstract level across different TREs, and this is something we're sort of looking at doing for QQR2, is the idea of basically being able to send something into a TRE that is different from the analytical platform, and allow something back out again in an automated way that's at aggregate level. And so I think a set of standards for how to do that, so that it's not just around kind of the CoConnect architecture, but around many different federated solutions working within that standard in a secure way, I think would be a really, really good development. I think there's sort of two different things. There's accreditation of the research or analytical platform, and then there's this accreditation of a new way which can query data at an aggregate level, and I think both are needed.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Robin is asking, does CoConnect link the NHS data with the cohort data?
So that's the plan, and we're still working with we have NHS, we have Public Health Scotland who signed off all of the governance stuff, and we're going forward in terms of just the technical implementation now. And what we're trying to do with them is work on this global identifier, which is automatically generated from the Chi number. So if there's a research cohort that also uses the Chi number, then you can have a pseudonymized ID, which means that linkage can happen basically, and you create you do that with in that way. With NHS Digital, we're also in discussions about this idea of can we use a global identifier, so that then you can do the linkage at a later point. Many different groups have said yes to it. Not all groups are saying yes to it, and there's back and forth about who wants to support it and who doesn't. The idea is that the CoConnect architecture technically supports that, but people need to adopt that process basically, and agree to take that forward. So that's still in negotiation.
Okay, I'm conscious about the time. A few questions from Arlene. Thanks, Emily. Tremendous amount of work in 1 year. Query about free text data. Are you developing NLP algorithms to extract any metadata from free text to enhance information available? First question.
Not at the moment. So I mean, it would be great if we could do that. That would have to happen in each different federated node, and they'd each have to do that on their own data, and then make that available, and make sure that was fully anonymous. So that's certainly something that could be integrated into it, but currently not.
Is there a governance framework to support any free text requests for researchers in the TRE?
Not that we are doing. There's an approval process that is in each different TRE where you can request free text information, and I know many different TREs do support providing free text information. But that's not sort of something currently that we're doing as part of CoConnect.
Okay, so the last question from Arlene was, if you are working with free text, has there been any discussion work on standardizing on free text standards from varying sources, which is challenging?
It is very challenging, and I think that's kind of a next phase. So I think at the moment we're trying to do it's still been quite a step change, just getting the kind of the standard data sets on boarded. It would be great to do that with free text at a later point. Yeah, it's still quite a challenge just to get the basic data sets there at the moment.
I can bet that, Emily. Unless there is any very, very quick and final questions from the audience, I don't see anybody. Thank you so much, Emily, for your time, for the fantastic presentation. The next seminar is going to be in a week on the 30th of March. Honggan Wu will present on landscaping clinical natural language processing in the United Kingdom. So, Emily, you're really welcome to join us if you have time. Well, thank you very much, Emily, and everybody.
I would say it's actually great that you guys have got the videos recorded, because I think that's a fantastic thing, because it means you don't always have to be available at exactly the same time.
It will be posted on YouTube. We'll give you a copy, Emily, so you can share it widely. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much. Bye. Bye, everybody.